Subhanallah. Allah. Ya Allah. Allah. Allahu Akbar. Allah.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the world of Islam, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America. From Denmark to China, from Australia to Argentina, from the USA to the UK, there are more than 1.5 billion Muslims in the world today. The religion of Islam is the fastest growing religion on earth, but unfortunately, the true nature of Islam is often misrepresented and misunderstood. So I invite you to join us as we travel throughout the world of Islam and give you the opportunity to know the truth about Islam and the truth about Muslims. You are now entering the world of Islam. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the world of Islam. Our travels throughout the world of Islam have brought us to Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States of America. And I'm joined by one of my brothers in Islam here at the Center for Islamic Counseling and Guidance, Imam Ismael Ibn Teasley. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for agreeing to sit and spend some time with us and contribute to this program about Muslims in America.
Alhamdulillah.
But Imam Ismael, just tell me a bit about yourself first and how you came to Islam.
Actually, alhamdulillah, if there was ever an example of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking the heart of an individual, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, Allah holds a man's heart in his fingers and he turns it toward belief or unbelief.
Right.
And I was an atheist prior to the acceptance of Islam.
Well, what is an atheist? What does it mean to be an atheist?
A person, an atheist is a person who doesn't believe in God at all.
Right.
And for myself, that was my condition prior to Islam. And one morning, Allah touched my heart. It just made my heart know that there is Allah.
But how was that? I mean, what happened? What was the feeling which came on you?
The room lit up. There was like a bright. The whole room just changed, and I saw my heart was alive from what it was prior to denying God. Just in that one instance. I mean, I can't put it in words.
At that time, did you know it was Islam? Did you know it was Allah?
Oh no. See, and even that's even more interesting. At first, Allah brought me into knowledge of Himself, knowledge and acceptance of God. And after that, I didn't know anything about religion because, remember, I've been denying it all my life. And so the only reference I had to anything about religion was, you know, what my father and mother were in, that was Christianity. So I was going to, once I had come into knowledge of God, I was going to join the church, like most people join the church. And Saturday night, prior to church services, I'm the new reformed man, you know, I'm sitting on the church steps clapping and singing the songs that I know because I'm going to join the church the next morning. And suddenly it came to me, just a thought, said, you know, what about Islam? And the only reference I had to Islam was when I was in the military in Vietnam. I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was an atheist then, and he said, my people are Muslim, and they're in Oakland, and he mentioned some reference in the Bible about Jesus, you know, the reference about having hair like wool and feet like burnished brass. And that's the only reference I had to Islam. So at that point, I said, you know, well, let me check out the Islam, you know.
So how long ago before you thought to go check it out had you remembered that from Vietnam? And what was the time frame?
This is approximately 7 or 8 years, something like that. Something like that.
So you're sitting on the church steps listening to the songs?
No, singing songs.
Okay.
Oh, I'm singing now.
Yeah.
See, I'm happy. I got God in my life now.
Right.
And I was going to join the church. And so then the thought came to me, the little conversation we had. So I said, okay, I'm not going to join the church. I'll just go and try to find out about Islam. The very next day, I was coming home from work, and I passed the bus stop, and there was a Muslim sister in full hijab, niqab and everything, you know. And I'm saying, thank God, because I'm God conscious now, right? You know, thank God. So I'm going to turn my car around and ask her, you know, where's her husband, so I can ask him about Islam. By the time I turned around and came back, she was gone. The bus had come and she was gone. And I said, okay, well, no, that's just how it goes. I went home, and I needed to come to the store again. And as soon as I came by the same bus stop, there was a Muslim brother standing there, dressed with all the Muslim attire, you know. And I wasn't about to let him get away. So I pulled my car over toward him. I guess he thought I was going to hit him, you know. And when I got out the car, I never talked with anybody about religion, you know. So I didn't know what to say, you know. So when I got out the car, I started walking toward him, and the words just came out my mouth. He said, "Man, hey man, you know, God sent me to you for you to teach me about religion." And I was crying and everything, you know. And the brother saw I was sincere, and he invited me to dinner, and he told me about Islam after that.
And how soon after that did you take Shahada and become Muslim?
In my mind's eye, I was Muslim from the time I saw that Muslim sister, because that was the first. For me, it was a sign.
Right.
And just the brother was a confirmation. He gave me information, and I had taken something of Shahada. And then he told me I should go over to the West End because Imam Jamil, formerly known as Rap Brown, was the Imam over there. And we, you know, a lot of black people knew Rap Brown, and we didn't know he'd become Muslim. So I went over to the West End Masjid. Imam Jamil was giving a khutbah there, and I formally took Shahada there in the West End. This is in 1982.
And how did you feel after taking the Shahada?
From the time that the knowledge that Allah put in my heart about Him, it was just it's a continual increase. Because for me, you know, I'm a very simple man. So and with a hard head.
And a big motorcycle.
Well, not the motorcycle, but the hard head. And so for me, God has to show me. You see, and so it was just leading me to the finalization, you know, the acceptance of Islam. You know, the sister, the brother, and then bring me to the West End area where there were Muslims, and it was like heaven on earth compared to what I was doing from before. You know, so how does it feel? The different. You see the sunshine here, you know, as opposed to the night. You know, peace as opposed to chaos. You know,
right.
I mean, Islam is you know, the source of peace for me.
And after you accepted Islam, how did your family react to the fact that you had become Muslim?
My father was somewhat disappointed because after they saw me going through the atheist stage, and when I finally accepted God, then they just knew I was going to join the church. And when I came back and told them, you know what, you know, I don't think I'm going to join the church. I think I'm going to try to look at Islam. And there was a conflict between us from that point on, you know, because they really wanted me to be a Christian like them. And from that point, my father and I, you know, we love each other, but the difference in theology occurred at that time, you know. And when I finally became Muslim, you know, we became a challenge for each other. Not in a physical sense, you know, nothing physical like that, but just in terms of the theology, you know. So discussions that we used to have where he dominated with his Christian ideas, because I didn't study religion, I didn't study the Bible or anything. So he could say what he wanted to say. Once I became Muslim, you know, I started to study everything. You know, I read the Bible from cover to cover in a few short months.
After you became Muslim, you read the Bible from cover to cover?
Yes. After I became Muslim, because my lack of knowledge of God, I needed to study Scripture.
Right.
So I read everything I could, everything I had not been reading about religion, you know, or studying about religion. I studied everything. The Vedas, information of the Vedas, what the Buddhists believe, you know, did a cross section of religion. And then after I had started to study the Quran, the very first time I opened up the Quran, and remember I said I'm a very basic man? The first time I saw the Arabic script, you know, my heart, I mean, I started to cry because I was saying, like, this is God's word here. You know, this is God talking to us here. You know, and I knew at that point I had to try to find out what these words are saying. And then even with the English translation, interpretation, the limited interpretation of the English of the Quran, it was so overwhelming in terms of the amount of information and how precise the descriptions of our existence were. You know, the Quran stood out above any and every other book that I had read.
And so now, how long have you been Muslim now?
I've been Muslim now approximately 27 years.
All right. And in terms of Islam here in America and the growth of Islam in America, what have you seen transpire in that times that you first took Shahada?
Well, I've seen Islam change from, in my lifetime, I've seen Islam change from a limited type of religion that was mainly associated with black people to the universal Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to be. I've seen Islam transform from a people who had very limited information about Islam, so much so that most of us were just perpetuating ignorance. Limited information to now there are books of tafsir from all those scholars, Ibn Kathir, Al-Qurtubi, you go on, and it's all accessible even in our language. I've seen Islam go from a closet religion to a worldwide phenomena, which now no one in the world can hardly say that they haven't heard anything about Allah, the Quran, Muhammad, peace be upon him. I just seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raising the knowledge level of people about Islam worldwide, accepting it or denying it, but still the knowledge is being presented to the world.
Imam Ismael, I know you're very involved in the Dawah, but what is your specialization? I mean, what field of the Dawah have you devoted more time to?
Well, alhamdulillah, the main area for myself as far as Dawah has been in the institutions, prison Dawah.
Okay, but we're going to get into what you do in the prison. But just give me a feeling of what the environment, first of all, is like in the prisons, and that the people are there become, accepting Islam, being Muslim. But what is that environment like in the prisons here?
Well, and really that's a question that's relative to the geographic locations, because you have different prisons with different programs, different wardens represent different mentalities in prisons. Overall, the prison situation in the areas that I deal in, basically Georgia and Florida, overall the prison situations they're not really like the old dungeons and things like that. Prisoners these days here in America, they have many rights, and they are, mashallah, they are protected, by and large by law. It may take some time to get some things accomplished, but still there is access to a type of justice within the prison system. One of the big concerns for myself, as far as seeing the numbers, the disproportionate numbers of black people in the prison system. And of course it's representative of the social system itself that has not been having same standards for everyone as far as rights. So you see a large portion of black people in prisons, and as a result of that you see that directly linked to the demise of the black family on the street. And directly linked to that is the fact that proportionately more black people were accepting Islam over the last 20 years than the general populace of America.
Right, and again, but what is the particular appeal of Islam to black people?
And this is what I was trying to, because I was making that link between the prison system, the portion of people who are accepting Islam in the prison systems, and how that affects the society at large. The outcry that we hear amongst the people, the outcry that we hear from the people is that, black families destroyed, and these people are not doing anything, and they are no good, and they need to be in prison. But once we go inside the prisons and start to present programs to the individuals inside, we see that Allah glorious and exalted, when in the Quran Allah says, for whomsoever Allah intends good, He gives them fiqh din, gives them a good understanding of Islam. And actually Allah will bring them into Islam and make them to excel, you see. So many of the people inside the prisons who become Muslim are men who have inclination toward studying, men who have inclination toward establishing family ties, men who have inclinations toward making the unjust just. So the impact that Islam has on the individuals is that it raises up, even in the prison population, it raises up a better prisoner. Because you find a person who looks at the rules and say, okay, this is right, this is just, and I can go along with that.
But let me ask you, just the prison system is supposed to be about rehabilitation. So how big a part of it is Islam and rehabilitating people than just being in prison without?
Once upon a time, prisons were about rehabilitation. It's about incarceration now. You have guys that are maybe in some institutions, 3 and 4 deep in dorms, in cells, and they just sit there. They don't accomplish anything. The only thing they do is time. As far as programs, GED programs and different things like that, many of those things aren't accessible to people. But The ones who really want to excel, they will push hard and find those things. Do you understand what I'm saying? Generally, people won't participate in the existing prison programs because realistically, I mean, what do they offer them? Not a lot. Because the problem is not so much with inability to attain academically, but there's a spiritual sickness. You see, there's a void in the person's behavior that makes them continue to act in this negative way toward society. Once the person becomes Muslim and the requirements in Islam, Iqra. You know, brothers are, this is reinforced amongst the brothers. Iqra, read, recite, go learn, acquire information about yourself, acquire information about where you are, see how you can improve those things. So the Islam, the kind of impact that the Islam has on the prisoners, it makes them a better prisoner. Once released from those prisons, if they stick to their Islam, they become better members of the society at large.
But let me ask you, do a majority of the Muslims or people who become Muslim in the prisons, do they stick to Islam when they get out?
Like most religions that are taught in the institutions, a greater majority of the people don't adhere to the teachings of Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or whatsoever they acquire in prison. Remember, it's a whole different circumstance. In prison, you're learning to do time, and you fill in the blanks with fill in the blanks about what those things that are accessible. Religion is something that's easily accessible to everyone, and so now when you have to submit yourself to authority, it's easier to do it under the guise of religion. Once out, and that freedom, if you would, you know, is placed before people, and the choices are greater, of course, you know, the weaknesses that they have, most of them are going to go back toward their old behavior. So in Islam, people accept Islam, 90%, out of 100%, 90% maybe, go back to what they were involved in before.
And then if they do return to prison again, they're the same kind of Muslims they were before they got out?
Same kind of Muslims they were before. And again, this is relative to the individual, because there are some people that they may not get it the first time, or the second time, or the third time. Some never get it, you know. But they become at first when they go out, when they become Muslim and then come back as Muslims, within the ranks of the brothers themselves, they lose a type of prestige because their credibility is shot.
Right.
They had the opportunity, and they taught and they teach inside the institutions. Once out and they return, people say, man, you're not for real. You know, you playing with the Islam. And this is, brothers are serious inside. You know, you playing with the Islam. And so his word that once was so valuable before, now he's just another person, you know, let's say flapping his jibs, you know, running his mouth.
Right, right. And do you find, like in the prison environment, I know it's, of course, whatever nice the facilities are, there's still some danger involved in being in prison. So do you find that among the Muslims that they're able to foster some security among the Muslims in the prisons?
Prison is a system of survival from the guards forming together in their protective circles to each individual group that forms together in their protective circles. I would be a fool to say that the Muslims in prison don't have to establish those same circles. And because of that, many people will come into the ranks of the Muslims for that additional protection. So they have to, I mean, that's part of prison, you know, learning to get with the people that are going to be with you and down for you. You know, your sincerity with God, really, that's not their business. How sincere are you to the man standing beside you? You know, and that's the measure generally.
Right.
And Allah knows best.
And like you said before, some of the people, when they get out, they go back to their old friends and their old ways.
It is He who has sent His messenger with guidance and the deen of truth, the way of life of truth, that it may prevail over every other way of life. And enough is Allah for a witness. Not only does that include America, it includes the world that Allah Ta'ala has created. So Islam is coming, you know, it will change itself, it will adjust itself. The basics won't change, but the people that it reaches, it will reach them, and you will find them wearing suits and ties, you will find them wearing thobes, you will find them riding motorcycles, riding camels, and all sorts of things. But one thing that they will all have in common, as Allah says, eventually, that everyone will testify to La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Imam
And may
Ismael.
Allah make America to be amongst the countries that lead in the acceptance of Islam.
Well, again, thank you very much for spending some time. And alhamdulillah, I hope our viewers are able to get some insight to Islam here in America and how the Islam is spreading in the prison and reforming people who may have been otherwise unreformable. I hope we've been able to separate the fact from the fiction, the truth from the falsehood, and the myths from the reality, and leave you with a positive understanding about Islam and Muslims. And I invite you to join us as we continue to travel throughout the world of Islam, keeping it real by telling the stories which must be told. And I ask you all to remember the very important rule: don't judge Islam by the people, but judge the people by Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله